Hello everyone and welcome to a new episode on my Mk1 Golf engine swap. In the previous episodes we have restored a set of Delorto DHLA carburetors that were fitted on my new 2-liter engine. The old power plant of my Golf got yanked out and was replaced with the new unit. In the last episode we managed to start the car for the first time, but we did encounter some issues. In today's episode we are solving some of those problems so that the project moves one step closer to being finished.
All my friends, yellow rider.
First order of the day is going to be to take off the gearbox again. In the last episode I explained that I have an oil leak issue at the bottom of the engine on the side where the gearbox is mounted to the engine. I am pretty sure that once the gearbox and the clutch assembly is off the engine, I should be able to pinpoint the issue with the oil leak. Most likely it's going to be the seal that I installed around the crankshaft. Maybe I made a mistake there, who knows? So we will definitely check that out. And there is actually another reason why the gearbox needs to come off the car, and that is because lately I have been hearing a weird noise coming from the clutch once the clutch pedal is completely pressed in. But to give you guys a better idea, I'll just show you the issue at hand. To my surprise, the noise that I was hearing disappeared once the camera started rolling. It is very strange, but the car seems to have healed itself. Yesterday, however, I did take a clip of the noise with my phone. That way I can at least prove that something was wrong before and that I'm not starting to hallucinate due to an overdose of brake cleaner fumes. It is very strange that the noise is gone again, but I'm hoping that once we take the gearbox off, there should be a noticeable issue. So let's just go ahead and deal with it. Pulling the gearbox on this car is probably one of my least favorite jobs to do, so let's put on some nice music and grind our way through. The gearbox is out, but in order to expose the oil leak, the clutch assembly needs to be removed as well. Okay, so I guess taking off the gearbox wasn't for nothing. Right about here I see some signs of oil, which means that the seal that sits behind this plate is not mounted correctly or is faulty. Anyway, we are going to go to the parts shop and get a new one, and then we can take this off and replace it. And of course we are going to go to the auto parts store in style. So it is the next day and I took delivery of the new seal. So now we can go ahead and take off the little seal plate, and I'm hoping that once we take it off there is a clear sign of where it failed or what the issue is. Okay, so now that everything is off the car, it was very easy to spot what my issue is. So this is the little plate that holds the rear main seal or the crankshaft seal. And this is a heat shield that mounts on top of it like this. And then here the gearbox mounts too. And when I was putting everything together, I noticed that I was missing one of these 3 bolts. So what I did was I just searched another one and then put it in right here. But what happened is that the bolt that I put in here was slightly too long. And because it was too long, it started to push the plate away from the engine block, causing the oil to slip through the oil seal. So yeah, that was my issue. You can even see on the engine block, there is a small indentation right here. So that is where the bolt was pushing against the block, splitting open the seal and the little plate, causing the oil leak and all my misery. So yeah, that is a pretty stupid mistake, but at least I know what the cause for my oil leak is, and that also means that we can move forward into fixing everything. I encountered another issue that I didn't mention when I was taking out the gearbox. When pulling out the speedo cable, the plastic gear thingy got separated from the cable and fell into my gearbox. To solve this, I drained out all the gearbox oil and then spent about an hour with a picking tool to get it out. Oh yes. Whew. Bastard. Next I bolted in the plate with a new seal, and then everything was ready to be reinstalled again. When bolting on the gearbox shield, I noticed a possible source for the mysterious noise I was hearing earlier coming from my clutch, because there are some scratch marks around the flywheel region, so maybe it touches when the clutch is pressed in. It is very strange to me that this is possible, but I just bent the plate away from the flywheel and then continued with the gearbox install. Okay, so I reinstalled everything, the gearbox, the drive shafts, pretty much everything. So now we'll give the engine a crank and hopefully the seal around the oil pan stays bone dry. My engine oil issue is now fully fixed, but I am afraid that the car still has some incontinence problems. The last time in the previous episode I didn't mention that I also have a coolant leak, and that is coming from this hose that is going into the heater core. It has failed before and we quickly fixed it by shortening it and then putting it back on, but it's still leaking quite badly. So I'm going to have to find a replacement hose for this one. And then I also have a leak coming from the gearbox, and that is coming from the speedo cable, more specifically the hole where it goes into the gearbox. And the problem is that the threads that hold in this bolt are in very bad shape and I can't really tension this little bolt down. And that means that the plate that holds down the speedo cable isn't really, doesn't have a lot of tension on it. And what happens is that oil seeps between the speedo cable to the outside of the gearbox. So I'm going to have to find a way to fix that, and then once that is fixed, normally it should stop leaking. I think I'm going to start with the gearbox issue, because that is the most annoying one. But I'm afraid we'll have to work outside, because in a few minutes Thibaut is coming by with Dimitri. A lot of you will remember Dimitri as the Audi 100 that we bought pretty cheaply. He is coming over to put on some new lowering springs because he wants to fix his suspension droop in the rear. And a job like mounting lowering springs is much easier on a lift, so we are going to let him work here since I don't need a lift today. So he can work inside and we are going to move the Golf outside. When Thibaut bought his Audi 100, it had a set of lowering springs on it that caused an uneven wheel gap. So that is why he is replacing them with some Eibach springs, and once they were on the car it sat a lot straighter. The car is sitting slightly higher than before, but normally it should drop a bit after the springs settle. I kind of got distracted by the sunny weather and many cold beers, so I didn't really achieve a lot that day. But I did manage to fix the speedo cable issue. Okay, so it is the next day. We kind of got sidetracked yesterday with Thibaut's car. I didn't really film a lot, but I did manage to fix the bolt hole in the gearbox. So basically what I did was I enlarged the hole so that I could thread in threads for an M8 bolt. Normally there should be an M6 in here. So now there is an M8 in there and the plate is properly locked, but the problem is that there is still a leak, and I did some research online and apparently there should be a gasket around this plate. I think since owning this car there have been 5 or 6 gearboxes in it, and none of them had that gasket. I will show a picture of what it looks like here. So I never had that gasket on any of my gearboxes, but this is the first one that seems to be leaking without it. So I ordered one of those gaskets, and once that is mounted it should fix my gearbox oil issue. I also mentioned that I had a coolant leak that is coming from this hose, and I have ordered a new one with new hardware, so that should handle that issue. Fixing those leaks will not be for today's episode because I'm still waiting for those parts, but I desperately want to get those leaks fixed because I have arranged for this car to go on the dyno pretty soon, but obviously to do that the car needs to be completely leak free. So those things are first on my to-do list, and other than that I have some other issues that I need to fix. For example, these ram air filters. So these filters are made specifically to fit onto Weber DCOEs and DHLA carburetors by stretching over their trumpets. And it is a very easy way to have an air filter on a set of carburetors like this. The only issue that I am having is that I didn't take into account that I might not have enough clearance in my engine bay, and that is the case because I'm hitting my coolant fans. And I was told that having these a bit depressed or squished is not a good idea. So that is why I ordered another set of these that is slightly less tall. If you are interested in buying these of me, they are pretty much new and I won't be using them. So if you are interested, send me a DM on Instagram. I have read a lot of comments of people that were concerned that I would be running the carburetors without any air filters, but now you know the reason. So yeah, we have reached a point in the build where I have to wait on a lot of small individual parts. But once we have all of those, I think we should be able to finish the project. I also am trying to source some extra jets and emulsion tubes so that when this car goes to the dyno, I can hopefully use that time to tune the carburetors a little bit better. Currently they are running pretty well, the best they ever have been. But they're still not 100% tuned like they should be. So hopefully we can use the time on the rolling road to filter out the last remaining tuning issues, and then the car should be properly dialed. For now, instead of waiting, I think I'm going to give the car a quick clean, because ever since I started with this project it has been sitting here in my dusty workshop. And I also just bought a new foam gun that I really want to try out, so let's go ahead and give the car a clean. The car is nice and clean, which is always satisfying. But this time in particular it was great to do something on autopilot without having to think about the problems that the engine still has. So yeah, this is going to be the end of today's episode. I realize we didn't do a lot of stuff in this one, but I hope that the cleaning part at least made up for it a little bit. Hopefully the next episode will be about completely dialing in the engine and then taking the car to the dyno, so keep your eyes out for that video because that is going to be an exciting one. And I also realized that we are about 7,000 subscribers away from hitting 100,000. So if you haven't subscribed yet and like these kind of videos, please consider subscribing. It really means a lot to me. That's it for today's episode. Thank you guys for watching, and until next time.